The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame. Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am Raygan Kelly, and this week I am joined by one of my fine co-hosts,
Nate Heininger,
and friend of the show, Jordan Starkweather. Jordan has joined us before. We had a great time talking to Jordan on the Game Boy episode we did a while back. Jordan is the host of the excellent Pocketoid podcast and proprietor of the also excellent CRT Pixels Twitter. So welcome back to the show, Jordan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Raygan. You make everything that I do sound way more important and official than I feel like it is.
No, nothing's official on the internet, but
yeah,
you start listing it out.
I'm doing it all as a bit, but I'm doing my best.
That's all any of us are
podcasting
doing.
for what, like years as a bit.
Yes.
That's same, honestly. And speaking of bits, this week we are doing. We were talking about a game where I believe the entire game is a bit.
Yes.
Damn good segue.
Thank you. You know, you do this for a while as a bit, and eventually you get good at segues.
The bits start to stack.
I know. I should also mention before we dive into things, Jordan, thank you for joining us, especially this week where it has been it's absolutely perfect timing. Sorry you couldn't be here, Shane and Laura. Laura is moving, and Shane fell off of his bicycle onto his face, and so he had to go to the hospital, and he had to get a bunch of stitches and some oral surgery, and the poor guy is really not feeling podcasting this week.
Yeah, podcasting is an incredibly low effort action, but the one thing you need is your face.
A mouth.
So, Shane,
a functional mouth.
We wish you broke his podcasting parts, and you know,
I told him to fall on some other more breakable bones, but you know, preserve the pod hole. But he fell right on his podcasting hole. So sorry, buddy. So we were going to have a gap week this week. In fact, actually, we were going to be covering the second chapter of Deltarune, which is still coming up as soon as Laura is back and has her internet back and all that. But this was perfect timing. So I heard about this game in a few places, but I think I was most intrigued by it after I think what pushed me over the edge on playing Franken was Jordan talked very briefly about it on Pocketoid. And I thought, wow, okay, I think I do need to check this thing out. So Jordan, would you tell me where you heard about this thing and like what was your first impression of it?
So I follow a lot of just indie game developers and people that are just into weird, really small games. And I followed the creator Splendid Land for quite a while. And she's been an artist. She's done some other stuff. She's done a lot of like Pokemon sprites and Pokemon adjacent projects and things, from what I can remember. And I actually bought a project from her on itch.io a while back, which was something like it was a little fake instruction booklet for a fake Pokemon video game, not Pokemon, but you know what I mean, little collectathon video game with a bunch of her own created monsters in it, and it was a cute little thing. And I always kind of hoped like this person would make a video game, like a full actual playable video game, because I like their art and stuff. And lo and behold, on my Twitter feed, I saw something about this game Franken, and was like, that looks interesting. And then I got like an itch.io notification about, oh, it's by this other person I've already interacted with before. So I heard it was only an hour long. And I booted it up, and it was good.
Correct.
It's hard to like when the game is completely free. It's hard to kind of be like, man, I went through this whole journey of whether I should play this or not. I saw a free 1 hour game and said, you know what, I've got an hour, and that's how I played Franken.
It's at a very appealing price point.
Yeah. The hour is much harder to make happen than the like $5 or whatever in most cases, but a free 1 hour game, that is really nice to see.
Yes.
I was very excited when I saw that this was short because I've been seeing people kind of tweeting about it, and sometimes tweeting some screenshots, and all of those seemed kind of funny. But I don't know. Seemed like a lot of folks suddenly were interested in this. I think that there was some streamer that, because this game has gone like legitimately viral, or at least viral enough that I certainly saw it multiple times, poking through on my Twitter feed. I don't really know like, the like virology of this. I don't know the epidemiology of who made this thing popular, but it does seem like this has really hit for Splendid Land, which is cool.
It's got to be the Undertale weirdos. I just know it. They just
There's a lot of crossover with Undertale on this for sure.
Yeah. A lot less like hugging and feelings in this.
Yeah,
I think it's just a lot more very funny bits.
I don't know. There's
okay, fair enough. There's a fair
hugging
and feelings towards
there's some very specific hugging and feeling. But besides the tone, I mean, I think some of the music, which I think is one of the best parts of the game, had a lot of Undertale vibes.
Surprisingly good music. We should definitely talk about some of the music there. How do we explain the story / setup of Franken? It is an RPG parody. We could put that at the top here. It's I think pretty clearly a parody of Dragon Quest. Which I'm not a super big Dragon Quest guy. I've tried a number of Dragon Quest games. I've never finished them, so they're not like a huge touch point for me.
I am a super big Dragon Quest guy. If you need a big Dragon Quest guy, you found one of the biggest for sure. So
great. Well, I mean, that was I clocked it as a Dragon Quest thing. Do you think I'm right here?
I mean, definitely. But I mean, I think that it's also just like, it feeds into a lot of just, JRPG tropes in general, which kind of find their origin in Dragon Quest. But there's also a lot of stuff kind of directly referencing Final Fantasy, in particular, like Final Fantasy IV at certain plot points, and also the way that Final Fantasy IV just does its plot structure, which is kind of bad and hilarious in hindsight. But when you're actually I don't want to give you spoilers, but when you're just laying out the things that happen in Final Fantasy IV as like a series of events, you're like, yeah, that's weird. but there's a few things.
I mean, honestly, you don't really need to worry about spoiling Final Fantasy IV for me. Like, honestly, I'll probably never finish it. Or even if I ever do loop back and play Final Fantasy IV, I won't remember this conversation.
Same. The airship is like a Final Fantasy thing, isn't it?
Oh,
yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'll just say that in that Final Fantasy IV in particular has kind of an obsession with killing off characters and then making those deaths mean nothing in the end by bringing everyone back. And so there's just there's a lot of jokes in this game around that trope in particular, which I feel like a lot of early JRPGs did.
I like that. The setup. So we're going to be careful about spoilers here. The game is only like an hour long. I think, if you really take your time, maybe an hour and a half or max 2. I think I played it for about an hour and a half. And then I did another playthrough because I really, really liked it. So games like this, where it is primarily just really funny and not like deep mechanically or anything, are particularly fragile to spoilers, because nothing kills a joke like some asshole on a podcast telling you the joke badly in advance.
But don't worry, we're going to try.
I know. So welcome to the podcast. We're going to do our best not to spoil all the jokes for you, although we are going to try to talk about some of our favorite bits or things that just to give you enough of a flavor to get a sense of if this is the kind of humor that you'll appreciate or if it's a thing for you. But don't worry, we're not going to absolutely talk through every minute of the 1 hour of this comedy game. Okay.
Yeah.
But I thought it might be a good idea to set things up by talking about the title crawl and sort of like the initial, like the very beginning of the game, to give you a little bit of a sense of like what type of intro we get here. Booting up Franken, you get a title crawl, very much like so lots of RPGs start this way. Or I always think of Star Wars, even though it's not exactly a Star Warsy crawl.
I mean, it's a Star Wars crawl. That's what everyone's going to think.
Yes. That's also kind of a, oh god, I'm going to be the JRPG weirdo on this episode, aren't I?
Please.
So that's also a Final Fantasy thing, because the Final Fantasy series is kind of famous for gimping so many things from Star Wars, and including like the opening text crawl, which is in the very first Final Fantasy, that kind of sets up the story. That's a, obviously a Star Wars thing, but it's like the very first Star Wars reference in Final Fantasy, which is kind of one of the big games this game is gimping on. So I think it's a reference to both, maybe.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The province of Fentisark.
Right out of the gates. Nailed it.
Is in turmoil. Monsters lay in wait throughout the land, waiting for innocent passersby to randomly encounter them. What's more, the arrival of the dreaded Hell's Night, foretold by the scrolls of the great wizard Trobe, signals the beginning of the lunar prophecy. Lots of this, proper nouns in all caps. Yes. In which the entire world could be plunged into eternal night. It might just cause the latest crossword puzzles to become more difficult, but I'd not take that risk. Neither outcome is good, because I think the current ones in the newspaper are challenging but ultimately fair, and I really don't want to get frustrated by them. Anyway, King Cleve has sent out various warriors to scout out the evil beasts, creatures, ghouls, and anything kind of like that, in the hopes that this great calamity can be averted, or at the very least mitigated temporarily, so that it can become somebody else's problem in the future.
There are surprisingly many JRPGs, which I think that's a good way to establish a franchise, but where that's the solution for the game's biggest problems. You know what? Let's just put this off for another 50 or 100 years.
The great evil was sealed. It has become unsealed. We must seal it again in the same way as before. Didn't it come out again? Didn't the seal not? Don't question the seal. Yeah, exactly that.
You got to keep the franchise alive. You can't kill off anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that immediately jumped out at me about this game is that it has, if you're going to make an RPG short, RPG battle systems are built to be like relatively complex things that, you study and eventually master, right? And you have to get better at it with time, or kind of understand the strategy of the battle system, et cetera, et cetera. Go grind some slimes in order to level up to level 2 before you go fight the bats. This game, I think very smartly, knowing this was going to be a 1 hour long thing, has the simplest RPG battle, quote unquote, system here I have ever seen. And I think it's really smart for the kind of game they're wanting to make here. You drop into a battle and you have one button action, and it is like fight. And you just hit that, and at the end of each battle, you go up by 1 level. And so the game does a good job of sort of gating you with creatures or monsters or various encounters, so that like the game knows exactly what level you're going to be at every turn. This isn't something where like it has like that true RPG leveling up. It's just treating the levels as a part of how it unrolls its plot and kind of gets you a little bit. And I think it's really, really smartly done for a comedy game like this.
I think it's smart too. And it, there's really only one path. Maybe there's some divergence you can do, but basically the combat requires you to go in a certain order, because every fight is pretty much predefined. And that's fine. I think it would be cumbersome if the combat was anything more than this.
So I think that how do I say this? So obviously this game is like a parody RPG, which I just want to clarify, hate parody RPGs. They drive me crazy, because most of them are just they're like done in bad faith kind of. And they're also just sort of like the big joke is like wow, wouldn't it be funny if we did this played out story of the princess is captured by the evil wizard, haha, what a played out trope, we're going to do it anyway, right? And so it just winds up feeling like, oh, I'm just playing a lazy RPG, but they're using the excuse that it's all a joke to not do anything creative. And the thing I love about this game is it feels like a lot of its humor is in good faith, and I feel like the battle system is part of that, because the sort of what is it? The thing that people always joke about with those games is like, well, you kind of just run through the whole game hammering the A button, right? And here we have an RPG where your only option is to hammer the A button and just kind of select attack over and over and over. It doesn't even give you other options. However, it like still uses, and this is kind of a microcosm of how the whole game's whole humor and whole narrative works. It still uses that very limited framework to tell a story for an hour and still remains compelling somehow. And so like it even levels you up perfectly to where like you're never even going to be challenged in the battles, which isn't even necessarily how a lot of RPGs are. But I'm thinking like there are several, especially during like the 32-bit and PS1 era, a lot of RPGs that's just kind of like they've kind of mastered the level progression so much that you're not even grinding at that point. You're just like running down a straight line essentially to the end of the game. And this game sort of is that as well. It's as linear as that. It's just like you do this battle, and then by the time you do the next battle, you're already strong enough to just hammer the A button and win anyway. But somehow it's the stuff that's around all of that, right, that makes it super compelling. And also the art in the battles is very good. Like all the enemy art and even just the little sword swinging animation is very satisfying.
I have to say that the art here, like, it's clear this is somebody who's like really studied the art of these older games. A lot of the sprites have they're all very unique. Like none of these feel like copy and pasted from Final Fantasy or something. But like they do have certain character to them, like the main character, which you get to name, by the way. I don't know if you want to share what your main character was named. Mine, of course, was named Pasta. I always name my main character Pasta now.
Somehow, I think I've heard you say this before. I don't remember where, but I know I've heard this before.
From Chicory, right?
Ever since Chicory, where you put in your favorite food and that becomes the name of your main character. Yeah. And so I just name everything Pasta now.
That's awesome.
But the hero Pasta, the sprite is great. It has these like really strange yellow eyes with red pupils. That's like not something you and like a tiny like red nose. I think it's like a really weird face, and it looks kind of like a little like googly eyed weirdo. And then when it does the close ups, it's like it has more of like what is that art? It has that kind of like space battleship Yamato or like Galaxy Express kind of like old school anime look to the face. Or at least that's what it looked like to me, which is like a funny dichotomy because like the little chibi version, the like overworld sprite looks like such a little ghoul. And then, I mean, it still has the color scheme on the nice portrait, but but that's something that this game does really well is this like contrast between like super simple, 1x1 square overworld sprites and like much more interesting in-game art.
Yes.
The game makes a few jokes about overworld sprites as well, including one of my favorite jokes in the game involving the fact that two people are the same overworld sprite. I won't spoil the joke, but it's very funny. My hero was named Romango, which is a name I've used for years. So brought that name back.
Romango is a fantastic name. Holy cow. I'm boring as hell, and I just always name my protagonist Jordan. I'm so sorry. I wish I had a fun
Get off joke. This pot.
I'm so sorry.
Wow. What's your favorite food? Jordan.
No, I'm pizza and chicory, unfortunately.
Oh, wait, really? I was pizza too.
Chicory. Oh,
yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah.
One of us.
And then, speaking of those in-games, the in battle sprites, like you're fighting the Hell Knight or Hell's Knight. And Hell's Knight, by the way, like the moment when I knew the kind of comedic tone that this was going for, and also the first moment in this when I absolutely like lost my shit laughing was when the Hell Knight shows up and they say to you, you've just been fighting a bunch of slimes, and the Hell Knight says, "You having fun smushing those slimes to smidgens, you shit?"
Yeah, Raygan, I have that screenshot in front of me too because I wanted that. I agree. You don't get a lot of video games, let alone RPGs like this, where the bad guy says "you shit"
or smushing. I don't know, man. Like it's something about that whole line. But yeah, Hell's Knight is just like a pretty average knight sprite, but then like in battle, it looks like metal as hell. But also it's like a 2-color sprite. It's like really interesting, like nice art, doing a lot in the sort of limited palette space. Like looks really really cool, like a 1980s digitized heavy metal cover or something. Looks awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
I also love that line by Hell's Knight because it's like immediately making fun of that thing that video games always do, where they're like, "Here, like we're not giving you a choice other than to do this thing," and then they point out, "Look at you doing this thing. Don't you feel bad, you piece of shit?" It's that's the joke. Is It's just every video game does, especially, and I mean not a lot of RPGs do it. I don't feel like, but even then they'll be like, you have one of two choices: you can snuggle the child or kill the child. Make your moral decision now. And it's weird.
Yeah, Hell's Knight has some of my favorite lines in the game. I think definitely one of the funniest characters. I had another great screenshot to try to give you a sense of the tone. They said, all I had to do in exchange for the great power I wield was to kill thousands of people.
Yeah, that's a great line.
It's a great line.
I know we're now just telling the jokes of the game, and so we are assholes. But I
think we're establishing the tone.
We are.
There's a lot more. This is another game that's a joke.
I'm scrolling through my screenshots, and you go to the king, of course, because like every game like this, your first thing you need to do is go find the castle and talk to the king, and he'll tell you what to do, right? So you go in there, and the king says, "Oh, Pasta, will you sort out this mess, won't you? I find you to be a meek and bland person who will do my bidding." And then you talk to his, like, I don't know, jester / assistant / whatever, and he says, "My lord wishes not to be troubled by problems. If anything terrible happens, you must not inform him at all."
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, that's literally just like the first, 3 Dragon Quest games are literally just exactly that, just going and meeting the king. I also love and I guess also the first Final Fantasy as well. I love also the little, I mean, am I getting too far ahead of myself talking about the little town that you go to after you meet with the king?
No, I think that's cool.
Because I love the peaceful town where everyone talks about how peaceful they are, but you also just get to meet a few characters that will, appear later on as well. But I think my favorite part is when you meet the elder of the village, who's standing next to 4 blocks of water in a square, and says, "This exquisite ornate fountain is the pride of our town." And that is like, I'm going to go ahead and spoil that one because it's in the screenshots on the website, but that was one of my favorite jokes.
It's so freaking good. It's really incredible. So I don't know how much more mileage we can get out of quoting the screenshots of this game, but like I do want to impress on the listeners that like we just last week we played and talked about, I don't mean, back to back is a little bit of an awkward situation for these games, but last week we just played and talked about Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Hell yeah. Another short, I don't know, RPG adjacent is more like it for Turnip Boy, but like, top down, you've very funny game, sort of joke delivery thing, but like this absolutely kicks the shit out of Turnip Boy in terms of how funny I thought it was. We were talking on that episode, Nate, I think you said that about 30% of the jokes in Turnip Boy landed for you, and I was waiting to hear from you what you thought the percentage was on Franken, because for me it was like easily, well, way funnier than Turnip Boy for my taste.
I generally don't like doing this like direct comparison of like humor, but it's very different styles of humor, right? Turnip Boy was all internet culture, pop culture references. That wasn't exclusively it, but a lot of the game's jokes, got a lot of mileage off of like, hey, you all know what we're doing here, right? Whereas this,
I'm a fruit that makes JoJo references.
Yeah, I'm pasta doing copy pasta, and like sometimes it worked, but the majority of the time it didn't work. And where I thought Turnip Boy was the most funny was when just like the situations that it had you in were funny, or like ripping up every document that you get your hands on is always funny. So like I enjoyed
the pure like trollish like agent of chaos kind of mode for that.
Turnip Boy as Dirtbag of the Year was hilarious. Turnip Boy as like an episode of Family Guy, sure, it's funny a lot of the times, but it's also like stupid or like I don't get it, you know, a fair amount of times as well, because it's a reference that like misses me, you know. Whereas this is all, you know, it's all more more situational humor. I mean, there is some stuff referential to like video games, you know. We already talked about like it references overworld sprites and things like that. But it's funny to have a big, you know, Hell's Knight come out and call someone a shit, you know, like that's funny in a very different way than a piece of pasta reading pasta infused copy pasta, you know. So it's a little harder for me to give the percentage because like the Turnip Boy has like direct jokes. Like this is a thing that is a joke. There's like a setup and a joke. Franken, I think outside of maybe the end, is more like, isn't this all just ridiculous and kind of silly and funny and making fun of itself? So I don't know if I can give a percentage, but I will say that I thought this game was more consistently funny than Turnip Boy, and like the writing was more consistent and had a clearer sense of like what it found funny, and just pretty much always executed on it. So
normally I would not, like from a programming perspective, normally I would not put these two games back to back in our process, you know, but like of course Shane then fell off of a bicycle, so we here we are. But like so I feel like it just sort of ends up like begging the comparison, or it certainly like made me make the comparison since I played these.
It was hard not to
back to back.
Yeah, it was hard not to. But I agree. I did think this game was funnier. But I would also, I think there's probably a world where some, you know, we even talked about it on the show. For some people, I bet Turnip Boy was like the funniest game that's ever been made, and that's cool. You know, everyone has their own opinion on humor, but like for me, Franken was more the type of humor that I you know, am attracted to.
It does that. It does that thing that like Frog Detective does too, where it establishes its own like vernacular or just like manner of speech that just kind of, I don't know what it is about that, but it's so funny. I'm sure one day it'll get old, but when it comes to like fictional worlds and stuff, I just always love, I guess you could compare it to like Earthbound in that way, or the Mother series in that way. It's like when you take this fantasy world and then you establish this just kind of level of oddness that everyone has, and that each character has, it makes it very endearing at the same time. To where like
it sets itself up
in this world too, not just like you're punching down on it or making fun of it, but like you feel like it's an actual place that's just kind of strange.
Yeah, the vernacular thing though, like definitely has something there. It's like it has more of like a voice of a singular writer to me than most games, or is, you know, comparing to Turnip Boy, sure, that too, but like this is obviously the work of a single person who has a very specific individual comedic voice to their writing, and like. It feels like a bunch of jokes this person made with their friends while playing Dragon Quest, you know, bundled together and made into a really funny hour of RPG experience.
I mean, given the opportunity, I would move to Leopard Zone.
The Leopard Zone.
That, I mean, those are some cool leopards, you know.
I mean, what other game can you say has a Leopard Zone in it? I can't think of any others, and I think that makes this the greatest video game.
I loved Leopard Zone. I was like, give me more Leopard Zone. I could take a full-on Leopard Zone spinoff.
Oh yeah. It's obviously like a riff on that idea of how like different RPG towns will just have like each of them will have
the Beast Men's town,
exactly, or like a specific affliction affecting one town. It's like, but just the idea that everyone's just, oh, we know we're just leopards, and I think we're
leopards here.
Did they say that too? I can't remember.
It's like four. I believe it's like 4 leopard dudes, and it's the Leopard Zone, and. But they're nice though, you know, they're having a good time, and everyone's welcome in the Leopard Zone.
Well, I don't want to return to just like read the screenshots. But I was just paging through and
we will
when you first meet Condor. Condor is your first party member.
Yes,
and Condor, you know, you meet them out on the overworld, and they say, "Heh, you're pasta, right? The name's Condor. My class is Cool Daggers. Let's start by venturing into this nasty ass cave. Local gossip tells me there's a magic shield in there that should come in handy." I just love that nasty ass game. God, this game is just like incredible.
I think Condor is kind of like the point where the game really landed for me. Like I was like, oh, this isn't just like a bit, like there is more going on here. Cause like, but they do it in such a, I don't want to explain what happens. I don't want to spoil what happens with Condor. But it's really funny and it fits into like certain tropes in RPGs so well. But it's also like, it shows how you can use writing to make the player care about a character in a way that they weren't expecting to, like even, and I think that's one of the things that is one of the more, how should I say this? I think it's one of the more like positive things that this game has to say about the genre itself, which is that like, I mean, I think the whole game is positive overall about the RPG genre. It's obviously a love letter to RPGs, but this moment in particular, I think is just like points out how we as like players will latch on to to characters or to moments, even when there is like not that much there to latch on to. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool. That's like a really cool observation about RPGs is that like they are genuinely compelling. Like there are reasons that they are genuinely compelling. And sometimes even if you're playing like the oldest of old RPGs, like, you know, the first Dragon Quest or even the first Final Fantasy, which like doesn't even give you a story until before the final boss. And they just do this giant lore dump with a bunch of dudes standing in a circle. And it's like, you still find moments and characters and things in those games that somehow like just connect with you just enough through just a little bit of writing or a little, you know, or just a small moment within the limitations of what that game could do to still like be impactful. And it's like, even here in a game where it's like just a big joke, like it still brings up all these characters that by the end you're like, oh yeah, that guy, or oh yeah, this person.
These are my
like,
friends.
Yeah, these are my bros I just met 10 minutes ago.
I'm here with my friends. This one had 4 lines of dialogue, but one of them was that
I would die for him.
And now I would die for him. Yes.
Absolutely.
That is exactly it. That's a really good point. Like that's what really good writing in a video game can do, is like just immediately take this like 25 pixel sprite and like 6 lines of dialogue and turn it in your head into a character that like is as fully realized as any novel or
wow. Well, they're like, we're gonna save the world together, and you're like,
yeah,
yes, welcome to my grand party. We're saving the world together.
That character in particular reminds me a lot of your first party member in like the more recent Dragon Quest X, who is also still my favorite party member, and just basically his whole characterization is just I want to be your best. I want to be your best friend and cool daggers.
Love it. It's a great combo. I think we could all use a cool dagger best friend.
Every friend group has the fighter, the truck guy, the cool daggers.
Yeah. I need to get a cool dagger guy in my group.
Oh man. And if there's no cool daggers in your friend group, it's you.
Yeah, if you look around and you can't identify the cool daggers guy, then you're the cool daggers guy.
Oh, shit.
I have noticed that I carry around a lot of daggers.
Nate, I think you wanted to talk about the music here, like, first of all, I liked the music, but I got the vibe that some of it was like ripped from anime, I think, and other places, and I didn't know where almost any of it was from. It seemed like references that were eluding me, so maybe you guys can enlighten me.
Well, Jordan, if you have a better idea of where it came from, I'm not sure.
She made a whole playlist actually on YouTube of the soundtrack.
Oh dang, that's gonna help when I edit.
I was
telling me.
I was trying to figure it out. Like I think she posted it on Twitter at one point. But it might be in like a reply to somebody else. But anyway, a lot of it comes from 70s and 80s anime in particular, which makes sense because a lot of games from that era literally just like ripped shit from anime and manga in the 70s and 80s. Like Mega Man is just a wholesale ripoff of, Jinzo or whatever, Cass Hearn, the Tatsunoko anime. It's like there's so many things, references that once you start looking into like 70s and 80s anime, you're just like, oh, this is literally just this other game that I've played at one point. It's the exact same plot. But so I feel like some of that is like a kind of a reference to that. It's like there's, but it also just fits this weird and wacky game really well. Like there were a couple tracks from like Zeta Gundam or something, or I'm thinking in particular the final boss track, which turns into a vocal track. I was just like, holy shit, this rules.
Right. It was awesome.
It was incredible. And I think one of the things that also shows, I don't know if this was the intention behind it or not, is like, JRPGs, they kind of all build off of each other. And even though they're really similar, it's like there's a lot of things within the genre that's like, oh, this is kind of like this thing, or oh, this is a cool twist on what usually happens in this genre, but they're taking it in this direction. And it's like, I feel like that's kind of a reflection on how the genre is just constantly stealing and remixing and reappropriating different pieces and parts from things and itself into this like wholly original work. And I don't know if that's intentional or not. That's how I choose to take it. But either way, the soundtrack, it's a bop for sure.
Yeah, well, that's a very scholarly read from it. I'd be interested to hear if that was actually their thought process, or if they're like, because there's another world where they're like, I don't have the money or the time to make an awesome soundtrack for this. I'm just going to rip it off from all of my favorite old games.
I just like Space Yamato a lot. So
those are, but I think those don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can be doing one thing and having the same impact as your read. The credits, display pretty clearly that it came from a ton of different sources. But while playing it, I did not know that. And, it was, I think the choices were fantastic, and it really sticks out to me. All of the fights have a very distinct song, and they range from like jazz ensemble fights to big band numbers, and then that totally bonkers final fight that you get a full on choir addition into it that is just great. Like, we do music episodes from time to time, and I feel pretty compelled to include something from this game in there because the choices were so good.
It also adds to it, like completely. Yeah, I would say it adds like this whole level of like production value that is just not there. It was just stolen, but it still works.
Well, that's what stood out to me before I knew that it was all just, coming from other places. I was like, damn,
they really put some effort into these music tracks.
It made me think of Undertale. I mentioned this earlier, but it made me think of Undertale, where Undertale has a relatively similar, quality of artwork, but like Toby Fox is a phenomenal composer, and the music is wonderful, and it lifts the whole experience. And I thought of that with this as well. But she just, even easier than, being a musical genius yourself, you just go and get it from everyone else and add it to your game. Why not? It's great. Same end result.
That is partly probably why this is a free thing, is that they can't clear the song choices. I'm still kind of glad they went this route. I can't wait to see what Splendid Land makes next. This is now
same.
Like this is like the greatest, like, here's my calling card, play my free game on itch. And now my like writing and aesthetic and ability to put together a game that is really good start to finish. Like,
I really hope they parlay this into a well priced great game, and they get both good recognition for it, but they also get paid really well for it, because this obviously we appreciate it being free, and shout out to that. But like, I will buy your next game. I would have bought this,
honestly, this, I would have paid $20 for this, no questions asked. Or now I certainly would. I think it's we didn't mention at the top, I don't think this is only on itch.io, so it's not on Steam, it's not on consoles. I wouldn't expect it to come to those platforms, probably in large part because of the music rights clearance issue, which is fine. Like, this is a cool work by a single developer. It's this weird little idiosyncratic thing. This doesn't have to be a commercial product, but like, God, I hope they like find a way to parlay this into great wealth.
I wonder if with its success, if it really is the music that would be blocking any sort of expansion, with its success, I bet it would be pretty easy to partner with some sort of composer, make some good original music for the game, and re-release it on anything, because you could play it on like iPhone.
I would rather see them just go on and make
a new game. Totally. Yeah. But I would as well. But
I know she's been working on a game called Amazing Treasure Valley for a couple years now. And
yeah, she has a Patreon, and I looked up that because I was like, I wonder what her Patreon's all about, and it does seem to mostly be about her in development game, Amazing Treasure Valley, which looks neat. I can't wait for that. Whenever that's
RPG.
Coming.
Yeah, looks like another little weird RPG. So after this, I'm freaking down for sure.
100%.
We're not doing spoilers, but Jordan, offline, I have to understand someday if you can explain to me how the ending of this game is a interesting think piece on how JRPGs end, because it was maybe the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a video game, and I absolutely loved it. And I need your like scholarly read on how it's a reference to something that I just don't understand. But
I think we'll leave that in. But listeners, for the scholarly take on that, come join us on our Discord, where we will talk spoilers about the bizarre ending of this game, which is a jaw-dropping, funny, weird ending that I just loved.
I loved it.
So stupid. And again, I say that with love. Because it's for, I'm here for it, and I loved it, but it is all-time dumb.
Here's what I'll say for now. It's like, does it take more talent to write something good by accident, or to write something bad on purpose?
God,
that's a beautiful question.
I don't know. I can't.
Well put. I'm going to be thinking about that all night.
Yeah.
Is there anything left for us to say about Franken before maybe we looks like we have some time on the clock? We can do a what's making us happy this week. But before we do, any last final thoughts on Franken?
It's good and it's free. What are you doing? Go play it.
Yeah, what are you doing? And probably you could have already finished it. We've been recording for 40 minutes. You can probably get through this game in the amount of time that we've already just been wasting talking about it.
We've covered hundreds of games at this point on this show, and like sort of the thesis statement of the show has expanded and contracted and molded to fit kind of whatever we want to be playing at the moment. But it's games like this that I think are really like why we started this show, like a super strange indie developer creating a truly unique thing that maybe wouldn't work if it was even 4 hours long, but for an hour it's exactly right, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so you should go play it. And I'm glad that we could, I guess we're just part of the viral mob, but we're I'm glad that we could cover this game.
I'll put this here. This is available on itch.io. Again, we've already mentioned it's free. It's splendidland.itch.io/Franken. There'll be a link in the show notes. And there are versions for download for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Because we have to ring a bell every time I say the word Steam Deck, I played this on the Steam Deck, and the Linux version does not work. So if you're playing on there, you probably want to grab the Windows version and run it via that.
And if you do it, I played it on Mac, and if you have an issue starting it, in the README file is a quick set of instructions with something that you have to do in terminal to get it to run. But don't be intimidated. The instructions are exactly right. And it took like 30 seconds to do. So even if you have never opened up terminal on your Mac, like the README will walk you through it. And it's super straightforward.
Yeah, this is a common issue with Mac releases on itch.io because if you're not aware, Apple has some pretty weird requirements as these things go regarding like indie developers releasing any kind of executable on Mac. They're all like well-intentioned security stuff, intending to keep you from like downloading something weird from the internet, running it, and it like encrypts your hard drive or whatever. But every Mac application of any kind has to be like signed with a certificate issued by Apple these days, and that actually changed. Like the process for that has changed a couple of times over the years, and it's not a huge deal, but it is complicated enough that a lot of small developers either can't do it because you need a Mac to do it, or they can't do it efficiently, or they don't have an Apple developer account, which costs a little bit of money. Like there's a lot of little little things to jump over there. So I don't resent a developer having that kind of issue at all. Just take a look.
And again,
follow the
it wasn't even really an issue. It's just like, if it won't open on your Mac, do the steps in the README. And I did,
Done.
and it opened on my Mac. It was no problem at all.
Nice.
So this is a segment we like to call What's Making You Happy This Week? Jordan, what's making you happy this week?
What is that? What is that voice? Why are
I don't know.
doing
I just
that?
thought I wanted a nice, transition there.
No, Shane's the one who ruins the transition between.
Yeah, no, he
segments.
just messes it up. I make it perfect and just really smooth. Jordan, what's making you happy this week?
It's a video game. What's making me happy is a video game called Citizen Sleeper that just released.
Ooh, it's on our list. I really want to play that. Tell me what you think.
Oh, it's so good. It's a really, really good game. I probably wouldn't have played it if my friend Spencer hadn't forced me to play it, and I didn't even realize that he was like working for the publisher, which is why he made me play it. So I thought he was just like, "Hey,
guerrilla marketing."
And it worked. I really wouldn't have thought it was for me because it looks, very visual novelish, and I usually just can't get into visual novels as much. But it's more of like a kind of a combination between a visual novel and like an RPG a little bit. But it's also like got some adventure elements. There's it's a big branching story told in a really kind of unique and modern cyberpunk setting. And it just kind of drops you into this world, and you have to survive, and you have to kind of add to your skill repertoire so you can perform different functions or jobs to continue the story, make friends, find a way out, and all these other things. There's kind of a ticking clock element where you only have so long before something bad is going to happen. One of actually several bad things could happen, and you sort of have to figure out what your solution is going to be to those things while you're trying to survive and live in this really amazing cyberpunk city. And it's all mostly told through not I wouldn't say dialogue, but just like written word. It's very like tabletop RPG in that way, but it still has this like incredible aesthetic with this beautiful art and one of the best soundtracks I've heard in the last couple of years, and really amazing sound design. Like if you play this, I would really recommend playing it with headphones on and just kicking back and like soaking it in, because it's a very cozy game, while also making you think about capitalism and shit.
Oh, cool. Really, I definitely don't already think enough about capitalism. I need more to be reminded.
I think when I went to the game's website, I think it even said like adventures in, what does it say? Hold on, I need to go to the website real quick and read the quote, because it like made me laugh. Like I read it after the game came out. It was like adventures in something. This is what it is: role playing in the ruins of interplanetary capitalism. That's literally the subtitle. They're like the tagline.
I love it. We've actually covered the previous game by this developer. It's Gareth Damian Martin, his like studio, which he calls Jump Over the Age.
Nice.
That was what was it called? In Other Waters. Nate, do you remember covering that one?
Yeah, so I was not on that episode. But
never mind. I'm sorry.
But it's okay. But I played the game. It was just a scheduling goof resulted in me not being a part of the episode, and yeah,
I think looking forward to whatever this developer got up to next. I believe he actually started as a games journalist, and he kind of quit that line and became a like a solo indie dev. And In Other Waters was like really neat. It's kind of like it's like a underwater exploration adventure kind of thing.
Oh, I remember this. I never got around to it, but I remember looking at it.
Oh, it's neat. Yeah. The interface cool. is incredible to look at. I actually found that there were certain things about it that got a little frustrating, because like you are sort of like fly by wiring this guy under, doing like an undersea exploration. And some of that does mean like, I'm using this bizarre interface to try to kind of essentially remote control the main character. But it was really impressive and also very ambitious for like a solo indie dev project.
For sure.
And it did. I thought it was pretty well done, and I'm even more excited by Citizen Sleeper. It seems like it's a different direction than In Other Waters, but it seems like the right direction for this developer. Like his strength seems to be around the like writing and ideas. And I mean, not to say that there were great gameplay stuff and especially interface and UI stuff about In Other Waters, but like that was where I was more interested in seeing more from Gareth Damian Martin. So I'm looking forward to checking it out.
In Other Waters was very finicky.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about weird, tricky interfaces with this game, because it is, I mean, it's very straight up like menu driven in a lot of ways. But it's funny you say that he used to be a games journalist, because the whole time I was playing, I was like, well, this dude's like a writer, and that is his thing. It's just like he loves his writing, and the writing's really, really freaking good. So I can't fault him there. God, what a good game. Now I want to go play it again. Now, if you like branching stories and just like making lots of different choices and missing out on things as a game design choice, I think you'll really like Citizen Sleeper.
Oh man, capitalism and missing out on things. Two of my favorite things.
I love an RPG that's like, I mean, like, I think you could 100% it, pretty easily, but I just love a game where I can have an experience with it and take a certain path and like miss things and let the world feel bigger than what I've seen, and like and like it still be a satisfying experience, if that makes sense. Like the Breath of the Wild effect, where you can just like kind of go and do what you want to do and then like be done with it, and it still feels like a full, complete experience.
Yeah, I agree completely. That makes sense.
So I was also going to make my what's making me happy this week a game, and it's one I've briefly mentioned on the podcast before, I think, because I started it like last week, but I've really gotten into it in the last week, and it's a little too long to make a game for the show, or I would have already been bullying my co-hosts into playing it. But I've been spending most of since I got Franken out of the way in just an hour, I spent most of my video game time this week playing F.I.S.T, Forged in Shadow Torch, which is another terrible freaking title. But it's a really, really good one of these. It's a Metroidvania in, the very sort of classic Metroidvania style, but it's really visually good. It's like 3D, it's 2.5D. So like really, really detailed 3D character models and backgrounds and environments, but everything's playing in a 2D plane. And it's got a really sort of funny vibe to it. The characters are all animals. So like your main character that you're playing as is Raygan, the rabbit hero of the, and it's in this like sort of steampunk / diesel punk world that's like this world of a city of animals called Torch City was invaded by an army of robotic dogs, and now it's like under siege. So like they lost the war with the robotic dogs, and they're ruling them with an iron fist. And then, of course, you are like a veteran from that war who's now trying to, like, your friend, a bear, gets arrested, and you have to go and break him out, and that sort of starts the events of the game. And it's interesting in that it's like a really elaborate and looks like, honestly, really expensive.
Yeah, it looks pretty high budget. I'm like, who made
2D
this?
Metroidvania? Like, I love 2D Metroidvanias, and frankly, like, I love 2D art. I love like pixel art. Like, but most of the time when you see people doing this game style, this type of game, they're doing it on indie budgets, and so they're doing 2D art, probably pixel art. Not that that's necessarily like bad, but it is an economical choice if you're making a game like that. Whereas like this is lavish, man. It's like really lavish, like AAA quality like models and animations, and runs at 60 FPS and like looks gorgeous the whole time it's doing it. It's incredible to see a game this pretty in this genre. It's like you don't think about it often, but like you don't get a lot of this style of production in this type of game, which I really like. And it's also a game from a Chinese developer, and you also don't see a lot of that, honestly. There's obviously like a pretty big game industry in China, but a lot of their games don't really make it over here. They don't get localized into English, or if they do, they get ignored. And they've got different tastes and whatnot. But like, this is a Japanese dev that was making a game for their domestic market, but also clearly like wanted to target like, the global market and the West as well, and did a really good job. There's definitely like a Chinese vibe to this. Lots of like, Chinese neon signs in the backgrounds and so on. But also they not fully, but like mostly voiced it in English, and did, I think, a pretty good job with the localization. So, kind of interesting from that angle too. But like, I really recommend this game for people who like Metroidvanias. It's on PlayStation 4 and 5 right now, and Steam. And I think it's eventually coming to Switch. I think they announced that there will be a Switch port of this. I would still recommend this on whatever the beefiest device you have is, whether that's your PC or your PlayStation or whatever, because I think it's worth the extra FPS and the extra fancy backgrounds and whatnot. But I think this is a really, really good one of these if you like Metroidvanias, and I do. So I would recommend people check it out. It's one of the things that's making me happy this week. Nate, what's up with you?
Well, I'm going to go completely opposite. And I spent the last weekend at the lake. And Raygan, I rode a jet ski.
Oh, hell yeah.
And you know what? That made me happy.
Sweet.
So if you're out there and you have access to jet skis, I say do it.
Jet skis are one of those things that truly should be a universal experience, but aren't. Like everyone should ride a jet ski. It was fun. Point. It's so fun.
I think, it should be. I'm pretty big on universal healthcare and things like that, and I think we need to start to include jet skis in that healthcare package. It was great for my mental state. I feel refreshed.
If you think about why they call it a jet ski, it's not really skiing related in any way.
Well,
water skis, sure, but water skis were already a thing.
I don't want to, and I also don't want to go off what he was saying. I don't want to go, get too political here, but it is weird that we consider certain products like a right, a right to have a certain thing. It's like, why not a right to have a jet ski? Why isn't that the thing that we all have a right to have? I think I have a right to a jet ski. Don't you?
You're starting to sound a lot like a Republican talking point. Like, where will it end? Are they going to say they got a right to my truck?
Hey, nice. Because it can stop at jet skis. I'm fine with that. I just need jet skis.
And where's the line? We don't know where the line is, but let's get to jet skis, and then
we'll tell you when we get there. We're all going to be on jet skis.
Yeah, I imagine, landlocked, people may not support our pro jet ski agenda, but they can move.
Yeah, so we'll find you something cool to ride. Whatever.
Yeah, it's like a dune buggy is like a jet ski, but for sand.
My neighborhood is full of people with golf carts. You move to the suburbs, and certain suburbs, people just have golf carts for no reason, and they ride them around.
That's the thing here too. Everybody's big on golf carts.
Why? It's like a car but shittier.
I think because you can drink and drive. Yeah. People take those things to the bars and then they, drink.
I live in the suburbs. They're not doing anything that fun. They're like taking their dog to the park or something. And I'm like,
Raygan, have you seen the price of gas these days?
Okay, fair enough. On that note, thank you guys for listening to The Short Game.
Hey, I've got a lot more to say
about your jet ski rights package. I'm willing to hear it, but let's save it for the next episode. We really want to keep them coming back.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, which is where you'll find all of our cool stuff, including links to our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. Did you know that every patron of the show gets instant access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show, about jet ski rights, all the various things like that. And we also plan things there. It's a great place to suggest games for the show, to talk about the episodes after they come out, etc. You can, and of course, if you back at the $5 a month level, even just for a little while, I will personally send you some stickers, and they have the Short Game logo on them, and they're very cool. So let's see. You can also find us on Twitter at _shortgame. And you can find me on Twitter at Raygan K. That's RAYGANK. Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter at NateSTL.
And Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and all of the things that you do?
You can find me personally on Twitter at Jackal27. You can also find my podcast at pocketoidpodcast.com or wherever good podcasts are found. And you can also find me at CRT Pixels, which is my CRT TV retro gaming account that is currently on a small hiatus while we redo our entire workflow, basically. So that should be back here pretty soon. But for now, that one's, not as active as my personal. So
that is an evergreen Twitter account, though. Like, go on it anyway and scroll back through. It is full of some really, really cool shots. In fact, the lock screen on my phone is the City Connection shot that you took just for me. I really appreciated it.
Once the new camera is up and running and everything, I'll have to do a new one for you, because now I hate all of my old photos. Now that I can see the comparison.
I mean, I know that feeling, but I'm glad you're continuing to move that project forward with cool upgrades. Yeah. All right. And listeners, once again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.